Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Pastor Aaron, and I serve as the campus pastor at Christ Church Crossroads, where your MOPS groups meets. I just want to say thank you to both Wendy and Jamie for asking me just to kind of share with you a few things that are significant about Easter week for us. But I also wanted to make sure that you're staying connected with what's happening at the church. We obviously have our Facebook group, Christ Church Crossroads, daily devotionals that are coming out via video, and then our weekend services where you can sign on and be a part of an online campus experience on the weekends, either Saturday or Sunday. And then additionally, for any of you who may be feeling alone, I want to make sure that you know that you should not go through this alone, as much as we feel isolated. But if you're feeling like you're getting to an unhealthy place, make sure that you reach out. I'm going to share just a couple of the things that our church has available to you in case it seems like it might be helpful. So obviously there's online small groups, and there are care groups that are currently starting to meet virtually, and your MOPS tables with mentor moms, so make sure you're reaching out to them. Sounds like you guys are being very well cared for during this time. That's awesome and really encouraging. We also have a bunch of volunteers who are practically helping people in need. If you have any needs, let us know, both practically and financially. And then we've partnered with 2 different ministries in the area that are helping with domestic violence during this time, and also with substance abuse. So if you find that any of that feels like it fits, do not hesitate to reach out. We are here for you. You can let us know on our website or reach out to me directly. Also, for your husbands, for your men, we are hosting a forum on April the 20th. It's in the evening. It's a webinar with an expert. And I can't remember the guy's name right now, but the topic is going to be on marriage and COVID-19. So it should be a really practical topic for us right now, as we're all kind of going through this time together. So Easter week, or Holy Week as it's traditionally known, is a week of incredible contrast, starting with Palm Sunday, going all the way to Resurrection Sunday, and then all the activities that happen in between, following Christ's life in that last week of what he experienced when he specifically was ministering in Jerusalem, and then on Friday when he was crucified, and he rises again from the dead on Sunday morning. The fantastic thing about this whole story is the contrast that comes from Good Friday, when Jesus dies on the cross, and you have Jesus, the worst moment in human history, where Jesus dies, to the best moment in human history, when Jesus rises and conquers the grave. No other religious leader has risen from the dead. And of course, 1 Corinthians 15 will give you a lot more information and detail about the facts and the people that saw Jesus after he rose from the dead. But I can't imagine being there on Good Friday when Jesus is dying on the cross and looking around and going, really, this is how it ends? This is how it ends with Jesus, the guy who walked on water and told a storm to be still, and it obeyed him. The guy who, thousands of people followed Christ, and he was like a rock star of the first century. Thousands of people followed his teachings and followed him, and they came after him, and yet here it is. It ends with him dying on the cross. It just seems so anticlimactic, and yet there's more to the story. There's just nothing after that moment, nothing, and there was emptiness, and it felt alone and isolation, honestly. And then on Sunday morning, and I want to read this for you. It's in John chapter 20. I just want to read a couple of verses for you. John 20, verses 1 and 2. The first events that happened on Easter Sunday morning. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved, and said, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know what they've done with him." She assumed that his body had been stolen. Now, it's fascinating that Mary would have gone first thing on Sunday morning. A couple of reasons for that. One, they couldn't have finished his burial from Friday, because Saturday they couldn't do anything. It's called Sabbath day. They couldn't do anything. So she gets there as early as she can on Sunday to continue burying his body, to finish the burial process. But secondly, and I think more importantly, Mary loved Jesus. And I don't mean that in a romantic way. Jesus accepted Mary when nobody else accepted her, and she loved him and followed him because she realized that the best life she could have was a life following Jesus. And so, to get a little bit more background on Mary, Mary was rescued from demon possession by Jesus. And so she's possessed by a demon, which means that she was probably pegged as mentally unstable, ostracized and isolated from society, unacceptable. There's an account, and I don't know how accurate this is. It comes out of 260 AD, so a couple hundred years after the time of Christ, where somebody pegged Mary Magdalene as a prostitute. So either way, prostitute, demon-possessed, here's a woman who was not accepted by anyone, and yet she was accepted by Jesus. So it was Mary who showed up first thing, and her first inclination was that Jesus' body was stolen, and he was gone because he was stolen. Now there was hope. Jesus had shared that he was going to die and that he was going to rise, but I mean, I can't imagine walking up on an empty grave. I think it's very realistic for her to not assume that he's rising from the dead, but that his body was stolen. And, you know, it's fascinating because Jesus did not need the stone to be rolled away. The reason why the stone was rolled away was so that Mary could go in, so that you and I could go in and see that Jesus was gone and believe what he said. And it didn't click with Mary right away. So in verse 11, Mary is sitting in the tomb crying. She's weeping. She's sorrowful. She's lost she's lost somebody who accepted her. She turns around to leave the grave, and there is a person. And it was hard for her to see because her vision is clouded because she's been crying so intensely. And Jesus is standing there, and she realizes that it's Jesus, and her tears immediately go from tears of sorrow to tears of gladness. And then, in just those moments, she's shedding tears of joy. And it reminds me of a verse that has a similar contrast, and that's John 10:10. The thief comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. Now, we understand that there is a real enemy, and that enemy is kind of three different things. There's an external enemy, those things that we don't have any influence over, that impact us, that cause us to sin. And then there's internal enemy, that is our sinfulness and our brokenness that contributes to the things that we do that are wrong and that hurt our life. And then the third is a supernatural enemy. All of these are very real. All of these Mary had experienced very vividly. And I want you to think about this for a second. Some of these questions that maybe Mary would have felt as well. Have you ever felt rejected by anyone? Have you ever felt misunderstood? Have you ever felt like nobody is listening to you? Have you ever felt that nobody gets you? We have these three enemies telling us all that about ourselves, externally, internally, and supernaturally. But the second part of that verse is the most powerful part. Jesus says, I have come that you might have life. That you might have life and that you might have it to the full. There's three things that scream at me when I read that verse. One is that Jesus is more powerful than any one of those three enemies, external, internal, or supernatural. He is more powerful than any of the enemies, the thieves that come to kill, to steal, and to destroy. The second is that when Christians talk about eternal life, a lot of times it's mystical and ethereal. That is not what eternal life is. Heaven is real. Heaven is our next life, the next experience we will have. But eternal life isn't just heaven, it is also now. Knowing who you are, being confident in your spirituality and your emotions, knowing who you are and how God's created you to impact your family and the world that you live in. And then the third is that Jesus is better. Jesus is better than any alternative, I think, which leads us to a choice, right? It's the same choice that Mary made. It's the same choice that billions of people through the centuries, billions of Christ followers have made through the centuries. And it's the choice that you have to make today. It's a simple choice. It's not complicated. The choice is to believe that Jesus lived a perfect life, died a death that we deserved, and rose again to conquer the grave so that we could have life to the full. Now, I hope that you'll join us on Easter Saturday or Sunday for the services that we host at Christ Church, but I wanted to give you 3 resources that are very helpful. One, there's a book called Captivating by Stacey Eldridge. It's for women. It's a fantastic book, diving a little bit deeper into what we talked about today. The second has been super helpful to me and to many of those on our staff. It's called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Sorry about that. Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzaro. And then thirdly, if you want to take a deep dive into your spiritual life, there's a book called Spiritual Disciplines Handbook. It's by InterVarsity Press. It's fantastic for your spiritual disciplines and your life with God. Thank you for letting me do this. I hope you all have a wonderful Easter weekend. Have a good day.